My wife forced me to attend the company party to impress a millionaire investor, but she didn't allow me to stand beside her. When the businesswoman arrived, she walked past my wife, came to shook my hand. "I finally found you after 30 years. My wife froze. "Stay in the corner. Don't come near me," Marta whispered as we entered the hotel ballroom. Bright lights, the murmur of executives with champagne glasses, the scent of expensive perfumes. I had to remain invisible as always. But then the door opened, and she walked in. Graciela Montes, the millionaire investor Marta had pursued for months. All eyes turned to her. My wife smoothed her pearl-colored dress, rehearsed her perfect smile, took 2 steps forward. Graciela walked directly past her, as if she were part of the furniture. She walked through the crowd straight to me, to the corner where I held a glass of ice water. She extended her hand, took mine, and her eyes filled with something I didn't understand immediately. "I finally found you," she said with a trembling voice. After 30 years, I felt the whole room stop, like Marta was frozen 3 meters away, her mouth agape and her eyes wide. Like something inside me, something that had been dormant for decades, began to awaken. But to understand that moment, to understand why a woman with a $200 million fortune looked for me for 3 decades, I need to go back. Back to the morning of that same day when everything seemed so normal, so small, so predictable as always. My name's Roberto, I'm 49. I work in a downtown bookstore arranging shelves, recommending novels to students, and dusting books no one's touched for months. I earn $1,300 a month. I wear cotton shirts I buy at discount stores. I take the bus. I prepare my own lunch because eating out's a luxury I can't afford. I live in a house not in my name. I manage a bank account I don't control, and I'm married to a woman who's turned me into her shadow for years. Marta's a senior executive at Vanguard Consulting, a firm advising companies in crisis. She wears designer suits, drives a gray Mercedes, and speaks naturally about mergers, acquisitions, and market strategies worth millions. When I met her 23 years ago, I was different. Or maybe she was different. Or maybe we were both other people, and time transformed us into strangers sharing an address. That morning, while I was making coffee in the kitchen, Marta came downstairs already dressed, her briefcase in one hand, her phone in the other. She didn't look at me. She never looks at me in the mornings. "Today's the company party," she said while checking emails. "The investor will be there, Graciela Montes. I need you to come." I looked up from my cup. "Me?" "Yes, you. Everyone goes with their partners. If I go alone, I look unstable, unreliable." Her tone was practical, almost clinical, as if she were explaining why she needed a specific folder for a meeting. "Okay," I said. I always say okay, but listen to me well. Roberto stopped in front of me, put away her phone, and looked at me with those eyes that once seemed beautiful to me. "You stay in your place. Don't talk to anyone important. Don't come near me when I'm with Graciela or Ricardo. Don't ask questions. Don't give opinions. You're just there to complete the picture. Understand?" I nodded. My hands encircled the warm cup. "I understand. Wear the gray suit, the one I bought you 2 years ago. And please cut those nails. They look like a gardener's." She left without saying goodbye. I heard the Mercedes engine, the sound of tires on the pavement, then silence. I looked at my hands. My nails were short, clean. They always are. But Marta needed to say something. She needed to remind me of my place, my function. I was the accessory, the object carried to give the right impression. I finished my coffee, washed the cup, went upstairs to shower. The hot water fell on my shoulders as I thought about the party, about Graciela Montes, about the instruction to keep away. It wasn't the first time. At previous meetings, client dinners, corporate events, I always received the same order. Stay back, don't talk. Smile if someone greets you, but don't start conversations. You're my husband on paper, not in practice. I turned off the tap, dried myself in front of the steamy mirror. My face stared back at me, lines around my eyes, some gray hairs at my temples, an expression I didn't know if it was fatigue or resignation. 49 years old. Sometimes I wonder where the man I was before went, before Marta, before accepting my life could be so small. I dressed in the gray suit, adjusted my wine-colored tie, shined my black shoes, the only pair I have for formal occasions. I went down to the living room and waited. Marta would return at 6 p.m. so we could go together. Meanwhile, I had the day off. The bookstore was closed on Sundays. I sat on the sofa with a book I had been reading, a novel about a man who disappears into the mountains and starts a new life. Fantasies, escapism, stories I'll never live, but that allow me to forget, even for a while, the reality of my existence. The hours passed slowly. At 6 o'clock, the Mercedes stopped in front of the house. Marta entered, looked me up and down, nodded with minimal approval. Let's go. The drive to the hotel was silent. She drove with a tense jaw, focused. I looked out the window at the lit streets, people walking with purpose, with direction. I felt the tie tight around my neck. Remember what I told you? Marta murmured as we reached the parking lot. You stay in your place. I remember. We entered the lobby, went up to the 18th floor where the event hall was. The double doors opened, and we were met by the glitter, the noise, the energy of important people networking. Marta took a deep breath like an athlete before competing. Then she turned to me and whispered those words I already knew by heart. Stay in the corner, don't come near me. And then everything changed. I stood by a decorative column near the bar. I took a glass of ice water. I observed. That was what I did best after so many years. Observing from a distance, being a silent witness to Marta's life. She was already in full executive mode, shaking hands, laughing with that calculated sound she reserved to impress, strategically touching arms. Ricardo, her partner, was by her side. A 52-year-old man. Perfectly slicked back hair, Italian suit that probably cost more than my 3-month salary. They talked to other executives, forming that closed circle where I would never be welcome. I looked at my polished shoes, my hands holding the glass, the time Marta had chosen for me 2 years ago, when she still cared how I looked, even if only for appearances. My short, clean nails she had criticized that morning. Anyway, every detail of my person had been approved, edited, controlled. I was a version of myself, designed not to cause problems, not to stand out, to simply exist on the margins of someone else's life. A waiter passed with a tray of canapés. I took one without thinking, smoked salmon on toasted bread. I ate it slowly, savoring something I'd probably never make at home. At home I ate simple pasta, basic salads, baked chicken. Marta dined out most nights, business meetings that ran late. I ate alone in front of the TV, watching shows I wasn't really interested in, just to fill the silence. Controlling wife. A voice beside me startled me. It was an older man, probably over 60, with completely gray hair and a kind smile. He held a whiskey. Sorry, I said, feeling heat in my cheeks. I saw you come in with her. The executive in the pearl dress. She told you something, and you stayed here glued to this column like it was your refuge. He drank from his glass. I've been to enough of these parties to recognize the dynamic. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to defend her, to say it wasn't like that I just preferred to be alone, but the words didn't come because it would be a lie, and I was tired of lying, even to strangers. I've been married for 30 years, the man continued. My wife and I are partners in everything. I don't mean we have a business together, though we do. I mean we're a team. Decisions together, successes together, failures together. He looked at me with something like compassion. That's not what I see between you two. It's complicated, I managed to say. It always is. He raised his glass in a silent toast and walked away into the crowd. I stood there processing the conversation. It was so obvious. Any stranger could see in 30 seconds what I had normalized for years. I looked again to where Marta was. She glowed. She really glowed. Confident, articulate, magnetic. She was good at what she did. She always had been. When I met her, that confidence attracted me. It made me feel that being with someone so strong would make me strong too. But over time I learned that her strength needed my weakness. Her light needed my shadow. For her to rise, I had to fall. Then, the ballroom doors opened. The murmur of conversations gradually diminished, like waves receding on the beach. A woman entered. Medium height, brown hair with gray streaks, she didn't try to hide. Impeccably cut, ivory suit. She wore no excessive jewelry, only a watch that probably cost more than a car. She walked with a different kind of confidence than Marta. It wasn't the confidence of someone who needs to prove something. It was the confidence of someone who no longer has anything to prove. Graciela Montez. It had to be her. The way everyone straightened up, how conversations stopped, how eyes followed her. That was the presence of someone with real power, $200 million in strategic investments, according to what I'd heard Marta mention for weeks. A woman who could save companies or sink them with a single decision. I saw Marta adjust her posture, smooth her dress, prepare that smile she practiced in front of the mirror. Ricardo stood next to her, forming a united front. Other executives approached too. Everyone wanted to be in Graciella's orbit. Everyone waiting for their moment to impress her. Graciella greeted some people near the entrance, shook hands, nodded politely, but didn't stop. She kept walking, scanning the room as if looking for something specific or someone specific. Her eyes swept over the groups, the tables, the bar. Marta took a step forward, intercepting her path, extending her hand with that brilliant smile. But Graciella barely looked at her. A brief, almost automatic greeting, and she continued moving forward. I saw confusion cross Marta's face, her smile freezing. Ricardo tried to say something, but Graciella had already passed. She kept walking directly towards where I was. My heart began to beat faster. It had to be a mistake. Maybe she was looking for someone behind me. Maybe she was going to the bar. I looked around, but there was no one else nearby. Just me, glued to my column, holding my glass of water like a lifeline. Graciella stopped in front of me, less than a meter away. Her dark brown eyes studied me with an intensity that made me feel exposed, vulnerable. But it wasn't a cruel look. It was a look that recognized something, that sought to confirm something. "Roberto," she said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. My name sounded strange in her voice. No one called me Roberto at these events. No one called me anything because no one talked to me. I was Marta's invisible husband, the well-dressed accessory. "Yes," I replied, my voice coming out weaker than I wanted. She extended her hand. I took it, feeling the firmness of her grip, the warmth of her palm. Her eyes remained fixed on mine, and I saw something form in them. Tears. No, not exactly. But there was emotion there, something deep and old. "I finally found you," she said with a trembling voice that contrasted completely with her controlled appearance. After 30 years, the ballroom disappeared. The noise became a distant hum. Only she and I existed in that moment, connected by words that made no sense, but somehow made all the sense. 30 years. What had happened 30 years ago? My mind raced back, searching, digging into memories I'd buried so long ago I almost forgot they existed. Then I heard Marta's voice, sharp and forcibly cheerful. "Ms. Montez, I see you've met my husband." Graciella slowly released my hand, but didn't break eye contact with me. "Your husband," she repeated, and there was something in her tone I couldn't decipher. Surprise, perhaps, or disappointment. "Yes, Roberto and I met a long time ago in another life." "What a wonderful coincidence," Marta said, standing next to me, her hand finding my arm in a possessive gesture she never made in public. "Roberto works in a downtown bookstore. Nothing very exciting, but he likes the quiet." I felt the humiliation in her words, the way she minimized me, explained me as if I were a hobby she'd outgrown. But Graciella didn't seem to be listening to Marta. She kept looking at me. "A bookstore," she said softly. "Do you still read as much as before?" "Before what?" My confusion must have been obvious because Graciella smiled sadly. "We need to talk, Roberto, alone. There are things you need to know." "Ms. Montez," Ricardo interrupted, appearing next to Marta with 2 champagne glasses. "Allow me to offer you a drink while we discuss the investment proposal. We have a presentation prepared that I'm sure will interest you." Graciella finally tore her eyes from me, looked at Ricardo, then at Marta, and nodded with renewed professionalism. "Of course, but afterwards Roberto and I have a pending conversation." She turned to me one last time. "Don't disappear." And she walked away with them, leaving me trembling next to my column, with more questions than answers, and with the absolute certainty that my life had just changed forever. I stood paralyzed watching Graciella walk away with Marta and Ricardo towards a more private area of the ballroom. My hand could still feel the warmth of her grip. Her words echoed in my head like bells. "I finally found you." After 30 years, what did that mean? Who was she really to me? I tried to remember, to force my memory back 3 decades, but it was like looking through thick fog. There were fragments, blurry images, sensations without definite form. I drank the rest of my water. The ice had almost completely melted. I needed air, space to think, but I couldn't leave. Graciella had said not to disappear, and something in her tone, in the way she looked at me, told me this was important, perhaps the most important conversation of my life. I moved towards the outdoor terrace. There were some people smoking, talking in low voices about business and politics. I moved away from them. I found a corner by the railing. The city stretched out below. Thousands of flickering lights. Lives that continued without knowing that mine had just completely turned upside down. The cold November air helped clear my head. 30 years ago, 1995, I was 19. I was in college studying architecture. That was another Roberto, one who designed buildings on paper, who dreamed of changing urban skylines, who had plans and ambitions. What had happened to that Roberto? When exactly did I stop being him to become this? The man who organizes shelves in a bookstore and accepts humiliations as if it were the weather, something inevitable not worth fighting against. You need a real drink. It was the old man again, the one with gray hair who had spoken to me earlier. He extended a glass of whiskey. You look like you just saw a ghost. I took the glass. I don't usually drink. Marta says I get clumsy, that I say inappropriate things. But Marta wasn't looking. I took a long sip. The liquid burned my throat almost pleasantly. Thanks, I said. You're welcome. I'm Francisco, by the way. He extended his hand. Roberto. I know. I heard her say your name. Graciela Montes. Francisco whistled low. Impressive. That woman doesn't talk to just anyone, and certainly doesn't look for anyone the way she looked for you. Childhood friends, lost cousins. I don't know, I admitted. And it was the truth. She says she knew me 30 years ago, but I can't remember. Francisco studied me with curiosity. 30 years is a long time. People change, lives take different paths. He paused. Sometimes we become people our past selves wouldn't recognize. His words hit me harder than the whiskey. He was right. If the 19-year-old Roberto could see me now, what would he think? Would he recognize the man who let his dreams die, who accepted becoming invisible, who allowed someone else to control every aspect of his existence? Sorry to intrude, Francisco continued, but I've seen many relationships in my life, businesses, marriages, partnerships, and there's a clear difference between those that work and those that only seem to work from the outside. He drank from his glass. Your wife doesn't treat you like a partner. She treats you like an employee, worse, like a decorative object she can move and store as it suits her. You're absolutely right, I said before I could stop myself. The whiskey was loosening my tongue, or maybe it was the exhaustion of carrying that truth for so long without saying it aloud. But it's complicated. Marriage. It's complicated. Marriage is work, Francisco corrected. But work implies both parties contributing, building, deciding. What you have isn't marriage, it's voluntary servitude. I was about to answer when I saw Marta come out onto the terrace, looking for me. When she located me, her expression hardened. She walked towards us with quick steps, heels clicking against the floor. Roberto, I need you to come inside, she said without even looking at Francisco. Her tone was an order, not a request. In a moment, I replied, surprising myself. Her eyes widened slightly. Sorry, I said in a moment. I'm in the middle of a conversation. Francisco coughed slightly, clearly uncomfortable, but I also noticed he was impressed. Marta looked at me as if I had just grown a second head. I didn't challenge her, I never challenged her. I always obeyed. I always gave in. I always apologized, even when I had done nothing wrong. Roberto, Ms. Montes asked about you, Marta said, changing tactics. Her voice softened artificially. She says she wants to talk to you before reviewing our proposal. It's important for the company, for us, for you. I wanted to say, it's important for you, but I nodded. I'm coming. I said goodbye to Francisco with a handshake. He whispered to me, whatever that woman has to tell you, listen to her. It might be the key you need. I didn't fully understand what he meant, but I thanked him with a gesture. I followed Marta back into the ballroom. As we walked, she spoke through clenched teeth. I don't know what's going on, but I need you to cooperate. Graciela insists on talking to you before making any decision about the investment. Ricardo and I have worked months on this. Don't ruin it. How could I ruin it? I asked, genuinely confused. I don't know, but with you, you never know. You might say something inappropriate, make some strange reference. Just be cordial, brief, and then come back with me. We entered a smaller, private room where Graciela waited, sitting on a cream-colored sofa. Ricardo stood by the window, clearly annoyed at being excluded from this conversation. Marta tried to enter with me, But Graciela raised a hand. Alone, please. But, Ms. Montez, I'm his wife. I think I have a right. Alone. Graciela repeated firmly, brooking no discussion. Marta shot me a warning look before leaving and closing the door. Ricardo followed her, though I saw them both stay nearby, probably trying to listen. Graciela gestured for me to sit opposite her. I did, feeling the weight of this moment without yet understanding its magnitude. Roberto, she began, her voice different now, softer, more vulnerable. I know you don't recognize me. 30 years have passed, and clearly your life took a very different path than I imagined. She paused as if carefully choosing her words. But I never forgot you. I never stopped looking for you. Why? I managed to ask. Who are you to me? I knew you as Beto, she said. Everyone called you Beto back then. You were an architecture student at Central University. I was in my last year of engineering. We shared some classes, remember? I closed my eyes. Beto, that name resonated somewhere deep. No one had called me that in decades. Marta insisted from the beginning on Roberto. She said Beto sounded childish, unprofessional. Little by little, that nickname disappeared along with many other things. We shared more than classes, Graciela continued. We had a study group, 5 people, you, me, Marco, Leticia, and Carmen. We stayed late at the library solving calculus problems, designing impossible projects, dreaming of changing the world. Her voice cracked slightly. You were brilliant, Roberto, the most talented of all of us. You had a way of seeing spaces, of understanding how architecture can transform lives. You presented a thesis project on sustainable social housing. You won first place nationally. You had offers from 3 major firms. Fragments began to appear in my memory. The library, long nights, laughter, bad coffee, drawing on tracing paper, a project, my project, modular buildings for low-income communities. I had won something. I had been important. What happened? Graciela asked. A week after your graduation, you disappeared. You left the university, rejected job offers, changed your number. No one could find you. Your parents only said you'd gone to another city. I searched for years. I hired investigators, followed leads, but it was as if you had evaporated. I met Marta, I said slowly, the pieces beginning to fit. 2 months after graduating, she worked in human resources at one of the firms that had offered me a job. We started dating. She said architecture was a saturated field, that I'd never earn well, that it would be better to find something stable. She convinced you to reject the offers, to wait, to look for something better, but something better never came. Graciela completed. No, I said. I started working at the bookstore as something temporary. Then we got married. Marta began to rise in her career. I stayed at the bookstore. Months turned into years. I stopped drawing. I stopped imagining buildings. I became this. I looked at my hands, the same hands that once created award-winning designs, now only useful for organizing books and cleaning dust. Graciela leaned forward. Roberto, I came here tonight because I finally found you, but I also came because your wife is seeking investment for her firm. Before making any decision, I needed to know what had become of you, if you were happy, if you had achieved your dreams. She paused. I see that you haven't. Her words hung in the air between us. I wasn't happy. That was obvious even to a stranger who hadn't seen me in 30 years. How had I reached this point? At what exact moment did I stop fighting for my life and started simply surviving it? Graciela, I said, her name sounding strange in my mouth. Why did you look for me for so long? We were classmates, yes, but 30 years is a lot of effort for a simple friend. She smiled sadly. Because I saw something in you that perhaps you didn't see yourself. Real potential, real genius. That social housing project you designed, Roberto, wasn't just good. It was revolutionary. I graduated and started my career in investments. I built my fortune by identifying exceptional talent and supporting it. I financed 32 projects in 3 decades, all successful, but there was always one project I wanted to finance first, yours. I wanted to find you. Invest in your vision. Help you build what you had imagined. I was speechless. $200 million. A woman with that power had been looking for me to invest in me, in the Roberto who no longer existed, in the Beto who had died slowly in a house where I never fit in a marriage where I was an accessory. It's too late, I said finally. That Roberto no longer exists. I haven't designed anything in 23 years. My knowledge is outdated. I probably couldn't even use modern design programs. Or that's what you've been led to believe. Graciela leaned back on the sofa. Roberto, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Does your wife support you? Has she ever encouraged you to resume architecture, to pursue your dreams? I thought of the thousands of small conversations over the years. Every time I mentioned taking a course, Marta said it was a waste of money. When I talked about drawing again, she commented that it was a youthful hobby I should outgrow. When I found job offers related to design, even basic ones, she reminded me that we didn't have time for risks, that stability was key, that I wasn't competitive enough for that world. She says she protects me. I replied, that the world of architecture is cruel, competitive, that I'm too sensitive for it. Do you believe that? I don't know. I don't know what to believe about myself anymore. Graciela took out her phone. I'm going to show you something. She searched through her photos and showed me the screen. It was an old photograph, yellowed by time. 5 young people smiling in front of a university building. I was in the center, thinner, with long hair, holding a tube of blueprints. My eyes shone. There was life there, purpose, future. We took this the day you won the award, Graciela explained. Marco kept it for years before giving it to me. Look closely, Roberto. That's you. That person doesn't disappear. They can simply be buried, silenced, forgotten, but they're still there. I touched the screen, zooming in on the image of my younger self. It was almost unrecognizable, not just physically, although I had aged, gained weight, lost that youthful glow. It was something in the posture, in the expression. That Roberto was full of hope. This Roberto was full of resignation. The door burst open. Marta entered without asking permission, Ricardo behind her. Ms. Montez, I apologize for the interruption, but we've been waiting for almost 30 minutes. We have the presentation ready there. I'm not interested in your presentation, Graciela said, putting away her phone. The silence that followed was dense, uncomfortable. I saw Marta's face pale, Ricardo clenching his jaw. Months of work. That's what Marta had said. Months pursuing this investment, preparing proposals, making contacts. And Graciela was rejecting her without even listening. But we've prepared detailed numbers, projections, growth strategies, Ricardo tried. Vanguard Consulting has a proven track record. I'm sure you have, Graciela interrupted, standing up, but after further investigation, I've decided it's not the type of investment I'm looking for. She looked directly at Marta. And after learning about your operating methods, it's definitely not the type of partnership I want. Marta shot me a furious look, as if this was my fault, as if I had sabotaged her big opportunity. Roberto, what did you tell her? Nothing, I replied honestly. We talked about the past. The past. Marta laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. What past could you have with someone like her? You work in a bookstore. You've never done anything important. He's an award-winning architect, Graciela completed. A designer with offers from multiple prestigious firms, exceptional talent, who rejected his future. She took a step towards Marta. Yes, I did my research after finding Roberto. I called former professors, reviewed university archives, spoke to people who knew him. Everyone told me the same. He was brilliant. And then he met someone who convinced him he wasn't. That's ridiculous, Marta said, but her voice trembled slightly. I never. Roberto made his own decisions. Really? Graciela looked at me. Roberto, have you ever made an important decision in the last 20 years without Marta telling you what to do? I opened my mouth to defend my wife, to say that, of course, I had made decisions, but the words didn't come because I couldn't think of a single one. The house was in Marta's name. She controlled the bank account, my job at the bookstore she had suggested. The clothes I wore, the friends I saw or stopped seeing, the places we went, everything went through her approval first. I didn't think it was like that, I murmured. I thought it was normal, that marriages worked like that. Some marriages work like that, Graciela said softly. But only when one person seeks to control and the other accepts being controlled. It's not love, Roberto, it's dominance. That's enough, Marta exploded. You have no right to come here and destroy my marriage with your cheap psychological theories. Roberto and I have been together for 23 years. He's happy. I take care of him. I give him stability, a home, a life. You give him a cage, Graciela corrected. A golden cage perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. And the worst part is you've convinced him that there's danger outside, when the only real danger is inside with you, slowly destroying who he really is. Marta turned to me. Roberto, say something. Defend me. Tell her she's wrong. That we're happy. That you love me. I should have said it. 23 years of training screamed at me to say what she wanted to hear, to smooth things over, to fix this. But for the first time in decades I couldn't, because Graciela had opened a door that had been closed for so long I forgot it existed. A door to the truth. And once you see it, you can't just close your eyes and pretend it's not there. I don't know if I love you, I said finally. My voice sounded strange, as if it belonged to another person. I don't know if I ever loved you or if I just got used to you, to obeying, to disappearing. Marta's face went through several emotions in a matter of seconds. Shock, fury, something that almost seemed like pain, and finally a mask of forced control. I knew that mask. I had seen it 1,000 times when things didn't go her way, but she needed to keep up appearances, especially in front of important people. You're confused, she said with a tense but measured voice. This woman appeared out of nowhere, filled your head with fantasies about a past you probably don't even remember well. Tomorrow, when you think clearly, you'll realize you're being manipulated. Manipulated? I repeated the word, tasting it. How you've manipulated me for 23 years to believe I'm less than I am, to accept crumbs of respect, to stay silent in the corners of your life. I gave you a home. I gave you stability. When I met you, you were a rudderless dreamer, with ideas you were never going to be able to execute. I saved you from a life of failure and disappointment. You saved me, I said slowly, or you buried me. Ricardo cleared his throat, uncomfortable. Marta, perhaps we should continue this conversation in private. No, I said before she could answer. No more private conversations where she tells me what to think, what to feel, what to remember. No more. I turned to Graciela. You said you wanted to invest in my original project. Is it still possible? After 30 years? Graciela nodded. The need for sustainable social housing is more urgent now than it was then. Your concept was ahead of its time. Today it would be perfect. But, Roberto, this isn't just about architecture. It's about you getting your life. Your identity back. You can't build anything real if you keep living like a ghost. And what do you suggest? Marta asked with poisonous sarcasm. That he quit his stable job? That he leave me after 23 years? That he destroy everything we've built together? What exactly have you built? Graciela asked. Because from where I'm standing, I only see what you've built using Roberto as a stepping stone. Is his name on your house, in your bank accounts, in any significant asset? Marta's silence was answer enough. I already knew the truth, but hearing it exposed publicly was different. The house was only in Marta's name. When we bought it, she explained it was better that way for tax reasons, credit, financial planning. The main bank account was hers. I had a savings account with $500. My bookstore salary went directly to household expenses Marta managed. I never questioned anything because she said I didn't understand finances, that it was better for her to handle it. That's normal, Marta said defensively. I have better credit, better salary. It makes sense that the assets are in my name. It doesn't mean anything. It means everything, Graciela countered. It means Roberto has nothing, that if he decided to leave tomorrow, he'd walk out without a house, without savings, without anything to show for 23 years of marriage. That's not partnership, it's financial servitude. We signed a prenup, Marta added, her tone now completely cold. Roberto agreed. What's mine is mine. What's his is his. When did I sign that? I asked, trying to remember. The memories were vague, blurry. A week before the wedding I explained everything. You said you agreed. I vaguely remembered that day. Marta had arrived with papers, with a lawyer. She said it was pure formality, that all modern couples did it, that it protected both. I was 19, I was in love, or I thought I was. I signed without really reading, without understanding the implications. I was 19, I said. I had just rejected job offers because you convinced me. I had nothing to protect because you made sure I had nothing. No one forced you to sign. No one forced you to stay all these years. You had options, Roberto. You always had options. Really? Graciela asked. Because from my perspective, you systematically eliminated his options. You isolated him from his college friends, convinced him he wasn't good enough for his field. You kept him in a job that pays barely enough to survive, but not enough to be independent. You controlled every aspect of his financial life. That's not giving options. That's creating dependence. Ricardo cleared his throat again. Ms. Montez, I understand you have strong opinions on this, but it's really none of your business. You're right, Graciela said. Roberto's marriage isn't my business, but Roberto is, because 30 years ago I met a brilliant young man who deserved an extraordinary future, and I'm going to make sure he finally gets it. She turned to me. Roberto, I'm going to make you an offer. You don't have to accept it now. You can think about it, but I want you to seriously consider it. What kind of offer? I managed to ask. I want you to work with me. I'll give you resources to update your knowledge, access to the best design programs, a team of architects and engineers. I want you to resume your social housing project and make it a reality. I'll invest $5 million initially. If it works, and I'm sure it will, we'll invest more. The words didn't seem real. It was more money than I had seen in my life. It was more than I would earn in 100 years working in the bookstore. It was the opportunity to become who I was again, or perhaps to become who I always should have been. You can't just offer him money like that, Marta protested. It's unprofessional, inappropriate. You're clearly trying to. To what? Graciela interrupted. To give your husband the opportunity you denied him. To remind him he has value beyond being your accessory. Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. Roberto, Marta said, and her voice changed. It softened, taking on that tone she used when she wanted to manipulate me into her way of thinking. Honey, think clearly. This woman is a stranger. I'm your wife. I know you. I know what's best for you. This is a dangerous fantasy. If you try to go back to architecture now, you'll fail, you'll be humiliated, and I'll be there to pick up the pieces. As always. I repeated. Yes, you've always been there. Not to support me, to remind me of my limits, my failures, my place. I felt something break inside me. It wasn't violent or dramatic. It was like the last thread of a worn rope finally giving way. I don't want to live like this anymore. What does that mean? It means I'm going to accept Graciela's offer. I'm going to try to recover what I lost, what I let die. And if I fail, at least I'll have failed trying, not hiding. Marta's face hardened completely. If you accept her offer, if you make me look bad in front of her, in front of Ricardo, in front of the whole company, you'll regret it. I'll make sure you lose everything. The prenup is clear. You'll leave with nothing. I have nothing, I said simply. So there's not much to lose. Graciela took a card from her wallet. Roberto, here's my private number. Call me tomorrow. We'll start working on this immediately. She handed me the card. Her fingers brushed mine briefly. You're not alone in this. Remember that. I took the card, feeling its insignificant weight, but its enormous meaning. It was a ticket to another life. A life where perhaps I could breathe again without asking permission, where my dreams wouldn't be ridiculed, but supported, where I wouldn't be invisible. This isn't over, Marta said coldly. She turned to Graciela. And you're going to regret getting involved in something you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Graciela replied. I understand that you spent years destroying someone to build yourself up, and I understand that now you're finally going to face consequences. Marta left the room with Ricardo following her, slamming the door shut. I stood there trembling slightly, holding a card that weighed like the whole world in my hand. Graciela waited until we were completely alone before speaking again. She approached the window, looking at the city lights below. I was still standing in the same place with her card in my hand, trying to process what had just happened. In 30 minutes my life had turned 180 degrees. Or maybe it hadn't turned. Maybe it had just stopped being paralyzed. Are you okay? Graciela asked without turning. I don't know. I replied honestly. I think I just ended my marriage. No, she corrected softly. Your marriage ended years ago. It's just that no one had officially declared it. She turned to me. Roberto, I need you to understand something. What I offered you isn't charity. It's not emotional rescue. It's a legitimate investment in real talent. I've reviewed your old work. I spoke with Professor Mendoza. Do you remember him? He's 82 now. But he keeps all his students' outstanding projects. He showed me your original design. Even with 3 decades of age, it's still innovative. Professor Mendoza. The name brought back clearer memories. A tall, serious man who rarely gave praise. When he approved my final project, he shook my hand and said, "You're going to change how we build cities." I believed him at that moment. I was 19 and the world seemed full of infinite possibilities. What happened to that project? I asked. After I graduated, did anyone implement it? No. Without you to defend it, it was filed away. Others tried similar concepts, but none captured the essence of what you had designed. The combination of sustainability, economic accessibility, and architectural dignity. Most architects can achieve two of those three things. You achieved all three. I sat on the sofa, suddenly exhausted. It's been 30 years, Graciela. I'm not that person. My knowledge is outdated. I don't even know how to use modern design programs. That can be learned in weeks. Talent, vision, that isn't learned. You either have it or you don't. And you have it. She sat across from me. But you're right about one thing. You're not the same person. You're someone with 30 more years of living, observing, understanding how people really inhabit spaces. That makes you more valuable, not less. Marta's going to make this very difficult, I said. The prenup means if we divorce I leave with nothing, no house, no savings. I'd have to start completely from scratch. And that scares you? It terrifies me, I admitted. I'm 49. I'm used to a certain routine, a certain security, even if that security comes with a very high price. Graciela nodded. I understand that fear, but let me ask you something. If you continue as you are, where will you be in 10 years? In 20. I thought about it. In 10 years I'd be 59. I'd probably still be at the bookstore. If it even still existed in the digital age, Marta would be more established in her career, more successful, more distant. I'd be even more invisible, smaller, more lost. In 20 years, at 69, what would I have left? What would I have built, experienced, gained? Nothing, I said in a low voice. In 20 years I would have completely wasted my life. Exactly. So the question isn't whether you can afford to take a risk, it's whether you can afford not to. I looked at the card in my hand. Numbers embossed in gold. Graciela Montes, CEO of Jares Investments. An address in the financial district. An email. A future. Maybe. What do you need from me? I asked. If I accept, what's the next step? First, you need to stabilize. Find a place to live that's not under Marta's control. Second, you need legal advice. The prenup needs to be reviewed by a competent lawyer. Sometimes those agreements have clauses that can be disputed, especially if they were signed under pressure or without adequate representation. She paused. I have an excellent lawyer, Carmen Ruiz, specializing in family and financial law. I can connect you with her. Carmen, the name resonated. Carmen Ruiz. From the study group. Graciela smiled. The same. She remembered you too. When I told her I'd found you, she wanted to help immediately. She says you owe her a dinner from 30 years ago that you never paid for. For the first time that night, I almost smiled. Carmen, curly hair, contagious laugh, always disorganized, but brilliant. She had studied engineering with us before switching to law in her last year. She said she preferred to build legal systems than physical buildings. She knows everything? I asked about Marta, about how I ended up. She knows enough and she doesn't judge you, Roberto. None of us do. Life's complicated. Relationships are complicated. Sometimes we get lost in them without realizing it until it's almost too late. Almost, I repeated. Do you think it's not too late for me? You're 49. If you live to 80, that's 31 more years. More time than you've been married to Marta. Enough time to build something extraordinary, to live completely, to be who you truly are. She stood up. But you have to decide, Roberto. I can open doors, provide resources, make connections. I can't force you to cross the threshold. That's something only you can do. I stood up too. My legs felt unsteady, as if I had been sitting for days instead of minutes. I'm scared, I confessed. That's good. Fear means it matters, that it's real. Just be careful not to let fear paralyze you so much that you lose another decade. I nodded slowly. What do I do with Marta tonight when I go home? That's up to you. You can confront her, you can wait, you can simply leave. But I'd suggest you don't make important decisions when you're emotionally exhausted. Go home if you need to, sleep, think, but tomorrow call me. We'll start working on a concrete plan. And if I change my mind, and if tomorrow I wake up and decide it's easier to stay where I am. Graciela looked at me with a mixture of compassion and firmness. Then I'll respect your decision. But, Roberto, I've met many people in my life. I've seen success and failure, bravery and cowardice. And I can tell you with certainty that the regret for what you didn't try is much heavier than the regret for failing while trying. I put her card in my pocket. It felt like a talisman, a magical object that could change realities. Although I knew it wasn't magic, it was simply an opportunity. And opportunities were only worth something if you took them. Thanks, I said, for looking for me, for not forgetting, for seeing something in me that I myself stopped seeing a long time ago. You don't have to thank me yet, she replied. Thank me when we're cutting the ribbon on your first building. We left the private room. The main ballroom was still full of people, conversations, laughter, but everything seemed different now. As if I were seeing the world through new eyes, or perhaps old eyes that had finally remembered how to see correctly. I looked for Marta. She was in a corner with Ricardo, talking in a low but intense voice. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she gesticulated with her hands. She was angry, probably strategizing, planning her next move. That was what she did best. Plan, control, manipulate, but for the first time her plans didn't include my automatic cooperation. Francisco, the older man who had spoken to me earlier, approached with a smile. Looks like things got interesting. You could say that, I replied. A little chaos is healthy. It breaks patterns that have become too rigid. He patted me on the shoulder. Whatever you decide to do it completely. Not halfway. A halfway life isn't life. Wise advice. It's not wisdom, he said. It's experience. I spent years living a life that wasn't mine, trying to please people who were never going to be satisfied. I wasted valuable time. Don't make the same mistake. Graciela appeared beside me. Roberto, I'm going to leave. I expect your call tomorrow. She handed me something else, a key. If you need a place to stay tonight, I have a guest apartment in the Centuri building. It's empty. Use it if you need it. No questions, no commitments. I took the key, feeling its cold weight in my palm. It was more than a key. It was an emergency exit, a refuge if things at home became unbearable, and they probably would. Thanks, I said again, the words seeming insufficient for what I truly felt. She left and I stood there, surrounded by people I didn't know, with a wife I no longer recognized and a future that for the first time in decades wasn't completely written. It was terrifying, it was liberating, it was the beginning of something I couldn't predict, and maybe that was exactly what I needed. The drive home was tense and silent. Marta drove with her hands clenched on the steering wheel, her jaw tight, her eyes fixed on the road. I looked out the window, watching the city lights pass, feeling the weight of Graciela's key in my pocket next to her card. I hadn't used either yet, but knowing they were there gave me a strange feeling, power, perhaps, or at least the illusion of having it. When we reached the house, Marta turned off the engine, but didn't move. She sat in the darkness of the garage, breathing slowly and deliberately. I knew that breathing. It was her way of controlling rage before speaking, of organizing her thoughts into sharp arguments like knives. Are you going to explain that? She finally asked, her voice dangerously calm. Which part? Don't play with me, Roberto. You know exactly what I mean. Graciela Montes, your mysterious past, your little act of rebellion in front of her. It wasn't an act. Then what was it? A psychotic episode? A midlife crisis? Because it certainly wasn't the man I've been married to for 23 years. Perhaps that's the problem, I said, surprising myself with my own calm. Perhaps the man you've been married to for 23 years isn't who I really am. Marta turned to me. The automatic garage lights illuminated her face, showing every line of tension. And who are you then? A failed architect clinging to university glories from 3 decades ago? A dreamer who never had the courage to make his dreams come true? I never had the chance, I replied. You made sure of that. I saved you from yourself. You were idealistic, impractical. You would have ended up jobless, penniless, blaming the world for not recognizing your genius. I gave you structure. I gave you purpose. You gave me a cage. I gave you a life. Her voice rose in volume. A home, stability, years of support. And this is how you repay me, humiliating me in front of the most important investor I've pursued in years. It wasn't about you, I said. For once, something wasn't about you. Everything's about me when it affects my career, my reputation, my future. Do you think Graciela will invest in Vanguard after this scene? Do you think Ricardo will forget how my husband made me look like a fool? You destroyed months of work in a single night. You destroyed 30 years of my life. The words came out before I could stop them. 30 years telling me I wasn't enough, that I wasn't capable, that I should stay quiet and small. 30 years erasing who I was until I could barely remember it. Marta was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Softer, almost vulnerable. I thought you were happy. I thought this was what you wanted. A quiet life, without pressure. No, Marta, that's what you wanted for me. You never asked me what I wanted. I asked you at the beginning. You said you wanted to be with me. I was 19 and I was in love. Or I thought I was. I didn't know that being with you meant ceasing to be myself. She got out of the car abruptly and entered the house. I followed, knowing this conversation wasn't over. It never ended until she decided it had ended. That was another of her unwritten rules that I had accepted without questioning for too long. Inside, Marta went straight to the bar and poured herself a glass of wine. She drank half in one gulp. What do you want, Roberto? Do you really want a divorce? Throwing 23 years out the window because a stranger filled your head with fantasies. I want to get my life back. Your life is here with me. No, I said firmly. My existence is here. My life is somewhere I still have to find. You're ridiculous. You're almost 50. There's no new life waiting for you. There's just more years of mediocrity until you're too old for it to matter. Graciela doesn't think so. Graciela, she spat the name like poison. Graciella's a manipulative businesswoman who saw an opportunity to sabotage me and took it. She doesn't care about you, Roberto. You're just a tool to hurt me. Why would she want to hurt you? She doesn't even know you. Because women like her enjoy destroying other successful women. It's competition, power games, and you're too naive to see it. I sat on the sofa, suddenly exhausted. You know what's saddest, Marta? That even now, even when I'm trying to have an honest conversation with you, you make it about you. Your career, your reputation, your fears, never about us, never about me. Because you were never strong enough to carry your own weight, she said coldly. Someone had to be the strong one. Someone had to make decisions, and that someone was always me. Because you never let me be strong. Every time I tried something, you crushed it. Every idea, every ambition, every small attempt to be more, you turned it into something impossible, impractical, dangerous. Marta finished her glass and poured another. Her hands trembled slightly. If you leave, you won't survive. You don't have money, you don't have a house, you don't have relevant skills. You'll end up in a cheap apartment working at the bookstore until they close, wondering why you were so stupid. Perhaps, I admitted, but at least it'll be my stupidity, my decision, my life. And her money, she added bitterly. Graciela and her $5 million. That's what really convinced you, right? Not a renewed sense of purpose, just greed. If it was about money, I'd stay with you. You earn 4 times what I earn. You have the house, the savings, the investments. Economically, staying makes much more sense. Then why aren't you staying? Her voice cracked slightly. What's so terrible about your life here that you'd prefer to risk everything? I looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. I saw a 46-year-old woman, successful, intelligent, attractive, but I also saw someone who had built her identity on controlling another person, who needed my smallness to feel big. And for the first time I felt something that wasn't love or hate, it was pity. It's not that it's terrible, I said softly. It's that it's not mine. It's your life, Marta, your rules, your decisions, your vision. I'm just an extra in your movie. That's not true. No. Tell me the last time we made an important decision together, one where my opinion really mattered. She opened her mouth, then closed it, thought for a long moment. You chose the color of the living room, she said. Finally, I chose between 2 options you pre-selected, and then you changed the color anyway because you decided it didn't match the furniture. That's a small detail. Those small details are my entire life, Marta. Thousands of small decisions where my voice didn't count until I stopped having a voice, until I stopped remembering I ever had one. She sank into the armchair across from me. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if it can be fixed, I replied honestly. I think we've gone too far in different directions. Or maybe we were never going in the same direction. We just pretended for so long that we forgot. Then, that's it. 23 years ended by one night's conversation. Not ended by one conversation, ended by 23 years of conversations we never had, of truths we never told, of a relationship that was never truly equitable. Marta drank her wine in silence. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. If you leave, I'll fight. The prenup is solid. You won't get anything. I know. And I'll make sure everyone knows why we're divorcing. What? You abandoned our marriage for empty promises from a stranger. Can you do that and not care about your reputation, your image? Marta, I don't have a reputation. I'm invisible, remember? So there's really nothing to destroy. She stood up, leaving her glass half finished. I'm going to sleep. Tomorrow we'll talk to lawyers. If this is what you want, we'll do it properly, but don't expect compassion from me. She went upstairs, her footsteps heavy on the wood. I heard the bedroom door close. I stayed in the living room, in the darkness, feeling the weight of what had just happened. My marriage hadn't ended with shouting or violence. It had ended with honesty. I finally took out the key Graciela had given me. I held it in my hand, feeling its potential. I didn't go to sleep that night. I stayed on the living room sofa, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything and nothing. Around 3 a.m., I made a decision. I couldn't stay in that house another night. Not while everything was so charged, so tense. I needed space to breathe, to think without feeling the walls closing in on me. I went silently to our bedroom. Marta slept with her back to the door, her breathing deep and regular. I took some essential things, clothes, toiletries, my personal documents that I kept in a drawer she never checked. Everything fit in an old backpack. It wasn't much, 23 years reduced to a bag I could carry on one shoulder. I left a note on the kitchen table. I need time to think. Don't try to contact me for a few days. Short, direct, without unnecessary explanations, just as she did when she made decisions for both of us. I left the house while the sky was still dark. I took a taxi to the Centuri building. Graciela's apartment was on the 20th floor. When I opened the door with the key she had given me, I was greeted by a clean, minimalist space, with huge windows showing the city beginning to awaken. There was nothing personal there, only functional furniture, a well-made bed, an equipped kitchen. It was perfect for someone who needed to disappear for a while. I showered, changed my clothes, and sat by the window with a coffee I made with the automatic coffee maker. I watched the sunrise painting the sky in oranges and pinks. It was beautiful. I didn't remember the last time I had seen a sunrise. Marta always kept the curtains closed. She said the morning light ruined her sleep. At 8 a.m., I called the number on Graciela's card. She answered on the second ring. "Roberto," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I was expecting your call. I used your apartment. I hope that's okay. That's what I gave you the key for. How are you?" Confused, scared, but also for the first time in a long time. I feel like I can breathe. That's a good sign. Did you talk to Marta? Yes. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. We're getting a divorce. She's going to fight for everything. But honestly, there's not much to fight over. About that, Graciela said. Carmen wants to meet with you today. She can see you at 11 if you're available. Her office is on Madero Street, number 432, 8th floor. I'll be there. Good. And Roberto, after you talk to Carmen, come to my office. I have some people I want you to meet, former colleagues who are excited to work with you. Graciela, this is all happening very fast. I know, but you've waited 30 years. There's no point in waiting any longer. I ended the call and prepared for the meeting. I put on the gray suit, the same one I had worn the night before. It was the only one I had. As I adjusted my tie in front of the mirror, I noticed something different in my reflection. It was still me. Still the same lines around my eyes, the same gray hairs, but there was something in the posture, in the expression, something less defeated. Carmen's office was in a modern downtown building. I went up to the 8th floor and found an elegant reception with the name Ruiz and Associados in gold letters. A young assistant immediately led me to a spacious office with a city view. Carmen stood by her desk, reviewing some documents. When she saw me, she smiled broadly. She still had that curly hair, though now with some gray streaks. She had gained some weight, but she looked healthy, successful, self-assured. "Beto," she said, using the nickname I hadn't heard in decades. "I can't believe we finally found you." She hugged me, and I felt something warm in the gesture. Genuine friendship, unconditional, without hidden agendas. "Hi, Carmen. It's been many years, too many." But Graciela brought me up to speed. "Sit down, please. We have a lot to talk about." I sat across from her desk. She took a notebook and a pen. "First, the basics. Graciela mentioned you signed a prenup with your wife. Do you have a copy?" "No. Marta kept all important documents. She said it was more organized that way." Carmen made a note. "That's a red flag, but I expected it. We'll request an official copy. Now tell me about your finances. Do you have bank accounts in your name? A savings account with $500. That's it. The house is in Marta's name. Investments, properties, vehicles. Nothing in my name. Carmen put down her pen. Roberto, I'm going to be honest with you. On paper, this looks bad for you, but there are some things we can explore. First, when you signed that prenup, did you have independent legal representation? No, the lawyer was there, but Marta said it was just to ensure the document was valid. She never suggested I get my own lawyer. That's exploitation of trust. If the lawyer represented her, but didn't clearly inform you that you needed your own representation, we can argue that the agreement was signed under unfair conditions. She made more notes. Second, in 23 years of marriage, did you contribute financially to the household? My salary went directly to shared expenses, food, utilities, maintenance. Good. That means that even if you don't have assets in your name, you contributed to Marta's lifestyle and wealth. We can argue that you deserve compensation. It won't be half given the prenup, but we could achieve something. I don't want to fight for money, Carmen. I just want to get out and start over. I understand, but Roberto, you have to think practically. Even with Graciella's support, you'll need a financial cushion. Stability while you reestablish yourself. It's not greed, it's survival. She was right. Although the idea of fighting with Marta over money made me uncomfortable, I also knew I couldn't start completely from scratch at my age. How long will this take? It depends on how difficult Marta wants to make it. If she cooperates, we could resolve it in 6 months. If she fights every point, it could take 2 years. 2 years. I repeated, feeling the weight of that time. I don't want to be tied to her for 2 more years. You won't be emotionally tied. The legal process is different. You can continue with your life, work on your projects, build your future. The divorce will just be something administrative in the background. Carmen leaned forward. Beto, I've handled hundreds of divorces. The most difficult are when one party has all the power and the other has nothing. But you have something now. You have allies, opportunities, and most importantly, you have clarity about what you want. That makes you stronger than you think. I don't feel strong, but you are. Last night you confronted your wife. You spoke your truth, and you made the decision to leave. That takes tremendous courage, especially after years of being silenced. We talked for another hour about legal strategy, documents I needed to gather, next steps. When we finished, Carmen gave me her personal number. Call me if you need anything, day or night, and don't worry about my fees. Graciella's already taken care of that. I can't accept that. Of course you can. Consider it an investment. When your social housing project is built, I'll visit it, and you'll say your lawyer was part of making it possible. That'll be payment enough. I left her office feeling slightly more stable. Having a legal plan, even a preliminary one, made everything seem more manageable. It wasn't just emotional chaos anymore. It was a process with steps, deadlines, objectives. I walked to Graciella's office, which was only 3 blocks away. The building was impressive, all glass and steel, with a lobby that looked like a modern art museum. I took the elevator to the 35th floor, where a receptionist waited for me with a smile. Mr. Roberto, she said, Ms. Montez is waiting for you this way, please. She led me down a hallway with walls covered in photographs of projects Graciella had financed, sustainable buildings, community centers, innovative schools. It was impressive to see the impact a person with resources and vision could have. Graciella's office was spacious, but surprisingly modest. There was no unnecessary ostentation, just elegant functionality. She was sitting at a conference table with 3 other people. When I entered, everyone stood up. Roberto, Graciella said, I want to introduce you to your team. A man about 35 years old extended his hand first. Marco Sanchez, senior architect. I've been studying your original project for the last week. It's brilliant, truly brilliant. Marco, the name resonated. Marco from the study group. He smiled. The same, though 30 years older and with considerably less hair. I couldn't believe it. Marco, another ghost from the past returning to life. We hugged, and I felt tears forming in my eyes. 30 years of forced solitude, of isolation, and suddenly I was surrounded by people who remembered me, who valued me. And she's Leticia Torres, Graciella continued, indicating a woman my age with modern glasses and a kind smile. Structural engineer. Leticia, I whispered, you too? I couldn't miss this, she said. When Graciela told me she'd found you, I knew I had to be part of what's coming. The third team member was a young man, perhaps 25 years old. And this is Andres Mora, specialist in sustainable design and green technologies. He'll help us update your concept with the latest innovations. We all sat around the table. Graciela unfolded the original blueprints of my project. Seeing those plans after 30 years was like finding a photograph of someone you loved and forgot. The lines were mine, the concept was mine, but they seemed to belong to another person, to another Roberto, to Beto, the young architect who believed he could change the world with buildings that offered dignity to those who needed it most. Marco unfolded updated versions next to my original designs. Look at this, he said with enthusiasm. Your concept of prefabricated yet customizable modules is still revolutionary. But now we have better, more sustainable materials. Integrated solar panels, rainwater harvesting systems, advanced thermal insulation. He pointed to different sections. We can reduce construction costs by 40% and maintenance costs by 60% compared to traditional social housing. Letitia added, and structurally we can make taller, more stable buildings with better seismic resistance. Your original design was for 4 floors. Now we could go up to 8 without compromising aesthetics or functionality. Andres showed digital renderings. Imagine entire communities built with this system. Not just housing, but community spaces, green areas, educational centers, all integrated, all sustainable. I watched them work, talk with passion about something I had created decades ago. It was surreal. For so long I had convinced myself that those ideas were youthful fantasies, irrelevant, forgotten. But here they were, alive, evolving, becoming something greater than I had imagined. When can we start? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Graciela smiled. We already started. I've identified 3 potential locations on the outskirts of the city. Land where the government is looking for social housing solutions. I have meetings scheduled with officials next week. I want you to come with me, to present your vision directly. I haven't presented anything in 30 years. I don't know if I can. Can you? Marco interrupted. We'll help you prepare. We'll practice together. And Roberto, when you talk about this, when you explain your vision, the passion will be there. It always was. We spent the next hours reviewing every aspect of the project. Costs, timelines, technical challenges, additional funding opportunities. It was overwhelming, but exciting. I felt my brain awaken after years of hibernation. Ideas flowed, questions arose, connections formed. It was like remembering a language you thought you had forgotten, but that was always there waiting. When the meeting ended, Graciela asked me to stay. The others left, promising to send me material to review. We were left alone in her office as the sun began to set, painting the walls in golden tones. How do you feel? She asked. Terrified, I admitted, but also more alive than I've felt in decades. That fear's good. It means it matters, that you're truly invested in this. She paused. Roberto, I want you to know this isn't charity. I'm not rescuing you out of pity. This is business. I believe this project will be successful, profitable, and impactful. I'm going to make money from this, and so will you. It's still hard to believe. I know, but in time you will. When you see the first building finished, when you see families moving into homes you designed, when you realize the real impact, then you'll believe it. She stood up and went to the window. You know, I spent years looking for you because I always wondered what happened, why someone with so much talent just disappeared. I thought maybe you died or moved abroad or had some tragedy. I never imagined you'd simply gotten lost in a marriage that slowly erased you. I didn't imagine it either. It happened so gradually that I didn't realize it until it was too late, or until I thought it was too late. It's never too late, Roberto. My father was an engineer. He worked in a factory for 40 years doing work he hated because he needed to support his family. At 62, after retiring, he finally pursued his dream of building bridges in rural communities. He volunteered for 15 years. He died at 77, happy, fulfilled. He said those last 15 years were worth more than the previous 40. And you always knew what you wanted. No, I studied engineering because it was practical, because it paid well, but during my last year I discovered that what I was really passionate about wasn't building things, but enabling others to build. Being the bridge between talent and resources. That's what I do now, and I love it. We were silent for a moment. Then I asked, what if I fail? If it turns out Marta was right, and I'm not good enough? Then you'll fail, she said simply. And you'll learn, you'll adjust, and you'll try again. But, Roberto, failure's only permanent if you stop trying. And something tells me that after 30 years of giving up, you're no longer that person. She was right. I had spent 3 decades accepting imposed limitations. I no longer wanted to live like that. I preferred to try and fail than never try, and always wonder what would have happened. I left her office as night fell. The city sparkled with millions of lights. I walked aimlessly for a while, processing everything. My phone rang. It was a message from Marta. We need to talk about the division of assets. My lawyer will contact you. Cold, professional, exactly what I expected. I replied, my lawyer is Carmen Ruiz. She'll coordinate. I didn't add anything else. There was nothing more to say. I returned to Graciella's apartment. I prepared a simple dinner, pasta with vegetables. I ate alone, but I didn't feel lonely. There was a difference. The loneliness I felt in my marriage was dark, empty. This was different. It was space to grow, to breathe, to find myself. Before sleeping, I took out a notebook I had bought on the way. Blank paper, infinite possibilities. I started to draw. First clumsy, unsure strokes, but then something changed. My hand remembered. The lines became firmer, more confident. I drew buildings, spaces, dreams I had buried. And as I drew, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. 3 months later, I stood in front of an auditorium full of government officials, investors, and community leaders. Marco, Leticia, and Andres were with me. Graciella was in the front row, smiling confidently. I presented my updated project. I spoke about architectural dignity, sustainability, community. My voice didn't tremble, my hands didn't sweat. I knew exactly what to say because I was finally speaking from my truth. When I finished, there was silence for a moment, then applause, intelligent questions that I answered with confidence. At the end of the presentation, 3 of the 5 officials wanted follow-up meetings. 2 private investors expressed interest. The project was going to happen. It was real. Outside the auditorium, Graciella hugged me. You did brilliantly. We did, I corrected. None of this would have been possible without you, without all of you. But you're the one who made it real, your vision, your work, your courage. Carmen appeared. She had also attended the presentation. The divorce was finalized yesterday. Marta accepted a settlement. It's not much, but it's something. $50,000 and some furniture. How did she take it? With the forced dignity of someone who lost control. But Roberto, she'll be fine, and you'll be better than fine. She was right. In the following months, I saw it become a reality. The first buildings began to be constructed. Families who never thought they could own a home received keys to beautiful, sustainable, dignified homes. I saw children playing in green spaces I designed. I saw community forming in places where I had imagined it would form. Marta and I didn't speak again after the divorce. I heard her company struggled after losing Graciella's investment, but eventually recovered. She found other investors, other projects. Her life continued without me, as it probably always did, and mine continued without her. Only now it was truly mine. At 50, I didn't start over. I finally started, not as the 19-year-old architect with impossible dreams, but as a mature man who had learned it's never too late to reclaim your life, to remember who you are, to build not only buildings, but your own future. 30 years lost, yes, but 30 years gained afterward. And those years, the ones I'm living now, are worth every moment of darkness I went through to get here.